Hey there, it's Evan Nathaniel Grimm, and welcome to my forecast for the month of August 2025. And in this video, I'm going to explore the key themes and highlights, and I'm going to apply all of this to each zodiac sign. And I will be doing horoscopes and making predictions based on your rising sign primarily, but you're also going to want to look at your sun and moon signs. And as you'll notice, I have a new production setup for my YouTubes. I'm going all in on my YouTube, and maybe you won't even care about this production setup, but hopefully you at least appreciate the dramatic scorpionic lighting. So I'm sharing a picture here of the Aquarius full moon, just as like a quick visual snapshot of the month, but you'll see other images pop up as I go through the transits here. And what are some of the key traits and hallmark traits of August? Well, we have Mercury in Leo for the entire month. We've actually had Mercury in Leo since late June, so it's in Leo for a long time due to a retrograde. But we're finally going to be getting out of that retrograde in the month of August. And Mercury in Leo, in one sense, seems fairly innocuous. Mercury deals a lot with like our day-to-day happenings, busy activities, transportation, logistics, thinking, communication, and so on. But, when Mercury retrogrades, even though it's a common retrograde, and Mercury in of itself is sort of like, very much, again, an everyday type of planetary energy. Because it's in Leo for so long, it is really an opportunity for us to explore the archetypes of Leo to the fullest, to cultivate our inner child, to learn how to communicate in a more expressive way. But also during the retrograde, to reflect on where we may be channeling the shadow side of Leo, where we've been too prideful or too stubborn and maybe too ego-driven. So Mercury retrograde in Leo in July and into early August, it really is an opportunity for us to slow down and think about maybe reorienting our frame of reference or reorienting ourselves in a way that is less ego-driven, actually, but really cultivating the higher expression of Leo, which is, I think, to, again, have this infectious sense of joy that radiates out, and this true confidence where we just love what we do and we share that with others, and we again have this spiritedness that rubs off on other people, and they're like, well, if Evan's taking a risk to just like express himself on camera, maybe I should too. And you can obviously be that fire and that inspiration for others. So with Mercury retrograde in Leo, it is really helping us to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and just sort of like really refine those aspects of Leo that serve us well, and to discard the aspects that have been causing us stress or grief or whatever, because we just had a new moon in Leo opposing Pluto, and Pluto deals with extremes. So on that new moon, July 24th, some of you may have suddenly started to feel all overly obsessive about, being seen or shining or being in the spotlight. And others may just suddenly recognize that they wanted to be in the spotlight a little too badly, or they wanted validation to a toxic degree, or their desperate need for validation has been undermining their relationships, whatever the revelation was. We do have an opportunity to pull back from some of the more egoic activities of Leo and to really tap into true confidence, not a false confidence, right? By again, sharing what we love with the world, taking genuine risks to do that, and having pride in what we love to do, showcasing our talents, but evolving. Mercury retrograde allows us to help, to evolve through that sign as well, I think. Because, by the way to evolve within any zodiac sign is to actually draw upon the opposite sign on the same axis. And this is something that I've just come into an awareness of in the years and years of doing astrology. So like the shadow side of Sagittarius, for example, is self-righteousness. Well, how does that even happen? Well, it's because that Sagittarius is excluding their Gemini opposite archetype in their psyche. So they're not substantiating their broad claims with Gemini and facts. Or what is the shadow side of Scorpio? Endless obsession, falling down rabbit holes. It's because that Scorpio is not cultivating and harnessing their inner Taurus to ground themselves and just to be content with things as they are. And a Leo, who is unevolved, is not drawing upon their inner Aquarius, because we all contain the 12 archetypes, right, within us. So an unevolved Leo is trying to suck all the energy out of the room and bring it into its own orbit. But a higher expression of Leo is to, again, tap into true confidence, love what you do, share what you love, but also to do something that sort of either, enlightens the group or the collective, or is at least aware of the impact on the collective. And also, it's like a truly evolved Leo will give other people the floor, right? Which is sort of an Aquarian approach, right? Like Aquarius is comfortable being in the crowd or being in the group, and to really work within a community. So a Leo, being socially aware, essentially is an evolved Leo. And, remember, astrology is partly the study of duality, whether we see it through masculine, feminine, light and shadow, sun and moon. I mean, we can look at it in many ways. But I've been teaching astrology courses in the last couple of weekends. And whenever I teach astrology, it's always a reminder to me that really, whether you're looking at Hermeticism or astrology or many different like esoteric schools of thought as well, really what we're talking about is reconciling opposites, right? And finding the middle path and finding the middle way and even transcending duality. And we witness duality again in many ways, in the archetypal masculine and feminine, fire, air versus earth, water. But but the zodiac signs themselves exist on six pairs of opposites, which are not masculine versus feminine, by the way. It's a masculine sign on the same spectrum as a masculine sign, feminine and feminine. But I'm just saying that how this all relates to the Mercury retrograde is that we can reflect on how to tap into that inner sense of joy and creativity and unbridled joy, while also reflecting on where it goes too far, where we become too ego-driven, and how we need to tap into our inner Aquarius and really consider, how our actions maybe are affecting those around us and the collective. So, spread that sort of heart-centered Leonic love. Continue to do that in August. Like, hype other people up. It is a great lunar cycle that we're in right now for like starting your music project, which I just did. I just entered the studio with a producer, and I'm working on my next single, and it's like really fun and perfect for the Leo new moon that we just had. But to also recognize again that that spirit and that creative spirit and flame is in all of us, and to really make sure that other people feel encouraged to do that, and to not smother other people with our egos. Anyways, I've talked about this ad nauseum, but Mercury, again, in Leo, it's going to be in Leo all month, all August. So you'll have plenty of time, again, to reflect on the Leo house of your charts, but also on, again, expressing the higher frequency of Leo. We also have Venus and Jupiter conjunct Sirius. They're aligned with the fixed star Sirius at 14 Cancer, August 12th. That will be so incredible and bountiful and spiritually driven in a lot of ways because of that alignment with the brightest star and the spiritual sun. We also, and sorry, I'll pause and explain that quick. With Venus aligned with Jupiter, we have the two benefics lining up. So anytime Venus and Jupiter are conjunct, generally you can expect that to be a time where you have higher odds of like maybe meeting a partner, doing something creative, just having a good day, finding more success financially. But of course, it depends on what aspects like it's making to planets or placements in your chart, right? So this one's going to be at 14 Cancer. So if you have a lot of placements at 14 degrees of Cancer, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, then it is highly significant. If you don't have like any major cardinal sign placements, then just look to the Cancer ruled house of your chart and use a whole sign house system, by the way. But that alignment with Sirius as well, which is like a fixed star that is so powerful and potent, and it is present in a lot of charts of like famous people or people who are just also very, very spiritually led and inspired. That alignment to me could, it could have something to do with a discovery, even, I think, related to like ancient Egypt, like an ancient civilization in Egypt, which I think it was earlier this year that there was that discovery underneath one of the Great Pyramids of some kind of conductive pseudo-electrical or proto-electrical like device or transistor, and I'm butchering that, but like I remember glancing at that and seeing that. You have to wonder if the Venus-Jupiter conjunction aligned with Sirius brings out some follow-up to that story, or just some, this is going to be abstract, but people may be able to like creatively channel something from that era in Egypt when they were building the Great Pyramids. But yeah, so that to me is probably the best and most fascinating conjunction of the entire year. Not just because it's the benefic planets coming together, which again is very plentiful and bountiful for relationships, money, creativity, etc., but it is aligned with Sirius. So it just kind of enhances the power and potency of that conjunction. Mars is going to go into Libra, and usually when I see Mars going into Libra, in its detriment, in the sign of its detriment, I'm like, this could be kind of frustrating for people. It's like they may feel as though they're suddenly being pushovers, or they're ceding too much territory to other people and being almost too considerate and not able to express their unique sort of individuality in situations. But on top of that, I would be also concerned usually about Mars immediately opposing Neptune and Saturn. And in some ways that is tough, but it's also going to be completing a kite that's been waiting to happen, right? Because it's going to trine Uranus and Pluto in Aquarius. And I mean, I'm looking at that right now on the screen. It's like such a beautifully social energy. It really charges up this Uranus-Pluto trine. So there's a sort of, I don't know, egalitarian quality to it, but it also has a power to the people type of feel. Because usually Mars opposite Saturn has a militaristic tone in my research on astrology and I mean on transits. But in this case, with the trine to Pluto and Uranus, it does feel like there's a grassroots movement going on. We actually have two kites forming in early August, by the way, with Mercury opposite Pluto as well, creating a kite with, part of that air trine it's participating in as well. So essentially, like, as we get into August, we have so much fire and air going on, and the Venus-Jupiter alignment. It almost feels like there's some sort of awakening. And I know that the term awakening is so cliche at this point, and we always promise that, people are going to have an awakening this month or whatever, and it's going to transform everybody. And then nothing happens or something very subtle happens. But I don't want you to be too cynical about that when I say that, because this could actually be some type of awakening, and maybe it's related to like Trump has been stymieing the possibility of releasing the Epstein files. I don't know if it has something to do with that, but there has been a turning of the tides, where Trump's base has started to question Trump's motives. And, you could kind of see this coming from a million miles away, right? Because obviously, he's powerful, he's connected. Of course, he's going to have some conflict of interest eventually with something like this at those upper rungs of society where, there is something potentially that exposes him, or there, again, is something that's compromising and he tries to bury it. I mean, anybody who studies not just the sign of Gemini, which Trump is a Gemini, but anybody who just like understands anything about Trump would know that eventually Trump's sort of decades of mingling with the elites would lead to something like this. And so then you had like South Park, really, airing this out in their latest episode. And then, Congress calling it early for the summer because they're worried about, how people are going to react to them voting yay or nay on the release of the files. So it does feel like August kind of carries on this momentum of people beginning to see more in common with each other than not, and maybe thinking beyond the polarization of the political climate. And I'm not saying that there's going to be some like, mass awakening where everybody taps into like their like a Christ consciousness or something. I mean, it is, and that is happening though. Obviously, like people are really waking up and exploring their spirituality on an individual level and finding so many avenues to self-realization relative to, before. So I think that is ongoing, but this grand air trine is so philosophical to me, and it allows for a lot of just new ideas to percolate in the collective. And with Mars opposite Saturn in the beginning of August, it is this feeling of like going up against a limitation or an authority, government, corporation. So maybe even there's like boycotts, protests. And obviously in Gaza right now, there has been a humanitarian crisis for a long time in Gaza, but especially right now you see in the news where there's mass starvation. And obviously that is a crisis that people are going to continue to pay attention to in August. And based on how a company reacts or how a politician reacts, like, people are going to be very sensitive to how people in positions of power respond to and address that situation and that crisis. So there's a couple different tracks running at the same time, essentially, that can definitely cause some it can continue to cause that upper crust to fracture a bit. Now, I also want to talk about Uranus and Gemini again. I want to remind you that Uranus has been in Gemini since July 7th. And already, a lot of my predictions about Uranus and Gemini have come true. We've seen, for example, the rapid dismantling of legacy media. This was something I called out. This is going to be and continue to be one of the hallmarks of Uranus and Gemini. It's going to force innovation through in the media to a point where, it's going to reveal how corrosive innovation has been to the legacy media industry, because obviously, like, legacy media thrives on like a linear television model, traditional advertising model, and people are increasingly turning to social media or even AI for like summaries of things, and they're not consulting media websites. So I used to work for this company, Business Insider, in 2014 and 2015 and part of 2016. At the time, they were the number one they had the highest traffic of any business website in the US. But now it's like, they announced mass layoffs in the past few months because obviously like their traffic is down and therefore ad revenue is more limited. And then you're seeing now, Colbert, the late night show with Colbert is getting sunsetted in May of next year. And, it's, I can't confirm the stats, but there's been like reports that, Colbert's been, that show has been losing tens of millions of dollars a year. And that wouldn't shock me, despite the fact that they get like 2.4 or something million viewers a night. It's like, on the one hand, that's impressive, but there's plenty of social media influencers who get 2.5 million people watching their videos every day. So, like that, that's no longer really like a metric for like success, and in the same way that it used to be, like, because we're in the attention economy now. We're not in this marketplace where there's only 4 or 5 channels. So the differentiation and the personalization of content has sort of rubbed away at the shine of late night traditional television. And I could go on and on about that, but you understand what I'm saying. And also NPR and a few other public stations have been stripped of federal funding as of a week ago. And regardless of how you feel politically about that, I mean, the fact is that, again, these traditional delivery mechanisms of information no longer hold the same perceived value by society in a lot of ways because, again, information is readily accessible. There's obviously always going to be a need for a human being to be like verifying information, of course. So I'm not trying to make a political point, but I'm just saying that Uranus and Gemini has accelerated the dismantling of legacy media. Anyway, so Mars and Libra typically would, denote a time of like weakened energy, more passive-aggressive behavior. But because it's forming a kite, which is very dynamic and harmonious, I actually really like Mars and Libra, at least at the beginning. And again, it's going to really stoke this very social energy, maybe a humanitarian sort of movement where people, really come together to provide aid for a certain cause, whether it's in Gaza or elsewhere, or the voices, the calls to release the Epstein files. Maybe those voices get louder and louder in the collective. And of course, it could manifest in other ways as well, where there's just a lot of innovation, a lot of negotiation between tech companies. There could be a lot of political maneuvering to get deals done, whether it's related to tariffs or even the Epstein files or something. Now we also have Chiron retrograde as of late July, and Chiron's initial, station retrograde is definitely going to, allow us to reflect on our personal wounds and insecurities, where we feel insecure about our perceived level of toughness. And we're used to Chiron retrograde in Aries at this point. It's retrograded in Aries countless times in the last, 7 years or so. But it's just worth noting, Chiron is retrograde. We're seeing the beginning of Chiron retrograde in Aries in August. And like I said, it's a call to reflect on how we can heal like our own self-image in a lot of ways, and to sort of accept ourselves and to achieve self-love. But this is a significant retrograde because when it goes direct, it's actually going to reach 0 degrees of Taurus next year. And I talk about that in my, I will talk about that in my 2026 horoscopes, which I will be publishing in a couple months. But yeah, Chiron retrograde is happening in Aries here. And then once it goes into Taurus next year, just briefly, then it will call upon us to, focus on a totally different area of our woundedness. We also have this, rebellious, rambunctious Aquarius full moon on August 9th, which I've, shown you already. That full moon is very, again, I don't want to say revolutionary. That's maybe a little extreme, but it is looking to provoke change in the world in some way, like through community efforts. Like it's not happening in isolation. So similar to how you saw like that couple at the Coldplay concert, like they were having an affair or whatever, and it just like spread like wildfire, and suddenly like every baseball game is having a Coldplay cam, and like that's an internet trend, essentially, right? But it's not necessarily generating like any kind of activist movement against cheating or whatever, or maybe it is, but as far as I know, it's not like an activist movement. It's just like an internet trend. But I think that something like that will happen in August, where there's some kind of like footage of something that really quickly inflames the collective, and it just like spreads across social media instantaneously. Except as opposed to that, which is sort of just like, innocuous humor, I think that this other thing in August could actually spark, again, more of an activist tendency, whether it's about like Epstein files or something that, or the starvation in Gaza, or it's about tariffs, like, or it's like a labor protest or a boycott of a certain company's product. Kind of hard to say, but I think that there will be an activist movement really springing up when Mars goes into Libra, because Libra is about justice, right? And fairness. And Mars in Libra demands that. And that full moon is, going to be really, really potent because there's that kite formation going on. And Mercury, even at that time, right? It's going to be opposing Pluto in a retrograde. And both are retrograde. Both planets are retrograde. So Mercury retrograde opposing Pluto could definitely reveal a secret or a dossier or a secret file, or, it could expose somebody. And then in August, we have the first of 2 Virgo new moons that we're going to have this year. And that one's on August 22nd at 0 Virgo. And then the next one will be 29 Virgo. The 2 new moons that we're going to have this year in Virgo, it's significant whenever we have, 2 new moons in the same sign. And that, that's pretty rare. But in Virgo, think about what Virgo pertains to. It's health. It is, it can be, related to, medicine, the medical field. It can be related to pets, personal health, of course, fitness, routine, work, labor unions, our chores. And, when we have this happening against the backdrop of Pluto and Aquarius, I mean, inevitably, the 2 Virgo new moons happening are going to really force us to reimagine like how we work in, how we work, how do we, find maybe dignity in what we do if AI is replacing us, or how do we, how do we just like go about our day differently if we're using AI? And so some of those questions are going to continue to come up, basically. And, it will highlight health-related themes. And that first Virgo new moon actually does build up to a Pisces, lunar eclipse in early September, which I'm not going to talk about today. But, technically, the Virgo new moon is going to plant the seeds for that eventual eclipse. So by the end of August, we are starting to really activate and reactivate, I guess, that Virgo-Pisces axis in our chart. And Virgo and Pisces, remember, they're on the same spectrum, on the same axis. They both have something to do with service. Like Virgo is how we're serving either people or, our company or others through an actual hard skill set. Like we can actually provide a service through like our work and our effort. Pisces is serving more so like a divine presence or a higher power, and it's like sacrificial. And both, again, both signs are sacrificial in some ways, but Pisces is more focused on the macrocosmic energies. So Virgo investigates the subatomic and sort of the minutia, like the trees, and Pisces looks at the forest and like the macro and the universal, really. And so, anyways, those are some of the key highlights of the month. In terms of the key ingresses, we have Mars in Libra August 6th, the Sun going into Virgo August 22nd, and Venus going into Leo August 25th. So Venus will be in Cancer for pretty much the entire month. And remember, Mercury's in Leo the whole time. I didn't mention Mercury changing signs. However, Mercury will go direct August 11th, and that's the major change when it comes to retrogrades and direct motions. As for noteworthy transits, we have Saturn still conjunct Neptune all month. Both planets are going to be still in Aries for the entire month. It's not going to be until early September that we get Saturn going into Pisces again, and then eventually Neptune. So with Saturn and Neptune both retrograde, though, now, we are reflecting on our responsibilities, our obligations, our karma, our long-term goals. But Neptune retrograde also is showing us where we've held delusional goals, or where maybe we've put faith in the wrong, organizations or structures or authorities. And that's why I think the Mars retrograde is the Mars opposition of Saturn and Neptune is going to be so powerful, because it's going to be opposing Saturn and Neptune while those planets are retrograde. So it's like, it feels like power to the people, where these legacy structures are weakening, dissolving, crumbling, and through all this air energy, which we're living in this age of air because, Jupiter and Saturn conjoined at 0 Aquarius a couple of years ago. It's like in this age of air, ideas spread really fast and ideas manifest and take on a life of their own. So whether it's an internet trend in August or just footage of something that's very distasteful or disheartening to people, all it takes is like one video, right? Footage of one thing to just spark this like mass riot or this even like mini revolution. And alongside it, we're going to have Jupiter and Venus conjunct in Cancer, by August 12th, and really building up until the 12th. And the Venus-Jupiter conjunction is so beneficial to people who are trying to smooth out, their home environment. Like if you've been at odds with your family, or, just feeling like your home is a place of stress, especially since Mars was retrograde in Cancer earlier this year. Jupiter and Venus conjunct in Cancer hopefully smooths out the Cancer house of your chart, wherever you have Cancer in your chart. Look at the house it's in. That's where you've had a rough go with Mars in Cancer last September and then retrograde in Cancer earlier this year. So once Jupiter and Venus align there in Cancer at 14 Cancer, I really think it could help you heal whatever disaster struck in the Cancer-ruled house of your chart. But that is going to make people more attached, I think, to domestic matters, or maybe staying home, or clinging to their family, or appreciating their family, appreciating their friends that feel like family. It's almost like people are nesting, like not necessarily literally, like if you're not expecting a baby right now, like I don't mean it in that way necessarily, but like with this conjunction, it kind of feels good to like be in your nest. And yeah, I think that if anything, that adds a softness to this other energy, which is very fast moving, rapid paced, and almost revolutionary. So yeah, Mars opposite Saturn and Neptune I talked about. That's August 6th through 17th pretty much. That's when you're going to feel like you're butting up against authorities and limitations. That's when you're going to maybe be caught up in the undertow of an internet trend or something. That's where you're going to see a lot of maybe just like a lot of quote unquote, just like ordinary people on social media, like calling out their local politician and being like, why did you call a Congress into recess? And and it's like, there's demands for change here that are really mounting, and like these voices supporting change are growing louder. We have Mercury opposing Pluto August 4th through 18th, pretty much. Because and these dates are stretched out because I'm using, generally like not a 10-degree orb of influence here in this case. I tend, for the oppositions and the transits, not in a birth chart, I tend to use 7 degrees of separation. But Mercury opposite Pluto August 4th to 18th, much of which is retrograde with Mercury. You might discover some shocking secret about someone in your life, or there could be a financial matter that comes to light. And in the collective, perhaps some kind of dossier or document or file gets released that exposes somebody powerful, or we learned about the cause of death of like an entertainer. So Ozzy Osbourne passed away, Hulk Hogan passed away, RIP to both of them. Ozzy basically helped spearhead heavy metal. And as a musician myself, it's like, that he is obviously a towering figure in modern music. And, it was really sad to see that news. And it happened so soon after his final concert. But I noticed, that Leo new moon was opposing Pluto. So in theory, that new moon was showing that we were going to hear about the death of an entertainer. And what's interesting is that, just a quick aside, Pluto was actually squaring Ozzy's north and south node at 2 degrees of Taurus and Scorpio. And it was on Hulk Hogan's 2-degree Aquarius north node. So Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne both have 2-degree fixed sign north nodes. So Pluto was exactly in a partile aspect to those nodes of fate, with Pluto being death and rebirth. And also the Leo new moon was at 2 degrees of Leo, with Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius. So you can see how the celestial bodies are moving in a way that that sort of influences us down here on Earth in a way that's undeniable, right? So obviously there's many people on this Earth right now with 2-degree fixed sign nodes that are still here. But the new moon in Leo is specifically showing us that there was going to be some kind of like notable entertainer who was going to pass away. But with Mercury retrograde opposing Pluto, August 4th through 18th, we might discover more detail about how and why someone passed away. And I'm not saying it has to be about like any of the two people I just mentioned. And by the way, I'm also not trying to imply that it's like guaranteed to be about like Epstein's, true cause of death or something. I feel like talking about the Epstein case is always this sort of like proverbial obsession that people have in the world for obvious reasons, right? And I'm not saying we should like turn a blind eye to any of it, but like for me to like say, oh, they're going to figure out something about Epstein's like cause of death, I think is a bit of a stretch and wishful thinking, but it does remain that like Mercury is opposing Pluto still by retrograde, right? And so we will discover something, and it's probably more to do with financial transactions, by the way, but we will discover something very significant in the way that powerful people are conversing or dealing financially with each other. The Sun and Moon are going to create a yod with Pluto and Saturn, by the way, while squaring Uranus during the Virgo new moon, August 22nd. And that position of the Sun and Moon is pretty much where Mars was when the U.S. dropped those B-52 or bunker-busting bombs in Iran. So maybe something from that time period comes up again. And, that yod with Pluto and Saturn, I'll just pull that up now. I mean, that yod is definitely always fateful, right? Yods indicate it's the finger of God and like very fated events will happen. And so when the Sun and Moon are both conjunct and, really at the apex of that yod, it does feel as though there could be some major policy changes in like healthcare. There could be some announcement about a leader's health, which I know I talk about in a lot of these videos, but in this case, it's especially possible because Virgo is like health and like Pluto and Saturn and Neptune are all involved in this. So potentially somebody who is well known, I don't know if it's Biden, but like there's somebody here who maybe is sharing more info about like a chronic health issue they have. And the square to Uranus and Gemini is showing that, there are, again, changes in maybe the education space. Actually, I think that's what a lot of it is. It's around the time of year when people go back to school. So schooling systems, Department of Education could go through some changes. There could be a lot of pushback against like, I don't know, the use of AI in early childhood education or something. But there's some kind of digital or artificial intelligence related technology that is like disrupting an educational field. I can definitely feel that in late August. But again, even in the workforce, it's like people are kind of reconceptualizing what it even means to be working. And in the against the backdrop of AI, obviously there's still work to be done. I mean, I'm here right now. I'm not an AI avatar, right? But people are starting to see the writing on the wall that like, AI has to be, you have to leverage AI to be competitive at this point. And maybe there is some kind of breakthrough here with AI and like a new LLM is deployed, or it just sort of, or even restrictions start to be put in place with AI, especially when it comes to AI, like tools giving like health and medical advice and therapeutic advice. I know that that's been in the news a lot. There's been like medical consortiums that have really pushed back against the use of AI for medical diagnostics. Now, just full disclosure, like I'm the kind of guy who like already thinks Western medicine is totally fraught. So like more power, like the more information we can have as a collective, like individually, personally, to make better decisions, the better. Like I don't really think that traditional doctors have all the answers anyways. There's a lot of guesswork involved. And borderline witchcraft compared to like what we could be doing with like nanotechnology, like scanning our bodies every second or something. Like there's obviously like not enough information when people are, diagnosing us and stuff. And there's a lot that AI can do. There's a lot of ground that AI has gained in actually being able to help us through these problems and issues. So, but nevertheless, you're going to see a lot of talk about, in the government or in Congress, maybe even, although I think they're on recess still at that time. But either way, you're going to see a lot of discussion around whether or not AI should be regulated in those contexts with like diagnostics and like giving advice that's deemed professional. And there may be like certain labor unions that make proposals to essentially protect themselves from innovation. But you can't run from innovation. Like innovation is a train that can't be turned around. Like obviously like AI is going to swallow up most jobs in the next like 10 to 15 years. I mean, I don't think there's no question about that. Because anything that has a pattern and anything that can be repeated can be imitated by AI. So anyways, let's continue. We have Venus square Saturn and Neptune in the first few days of the month. So right when Venus goes into Cancer, it does square Saturn and Neptune. So maybe some of you will have official, formal, and difficult conversations with your family about something. Some of you are negotiating basically some terms or situation with your family. And then Mars is still conjunct the South Node in Virgo from August 1st through 6th, which is very tiring, right? Mars and the South Node have been conjunct since a week before I started filming this in mid-July. And that Mars-South Node conjunction is way, way more draining, I think, than the Mercury Retrograde. And it's obviously intertwined with the Mercury Retrograde because Mercury disposits Mars in Virgo. But the Mars-South Node conjunction is like Mars going into a sinkhole. It's like, oh, there goes your energy. Obsessing over productivity has its shortcomings, or it's showing us that, we need to restructure our daily routines to recuperate. So if you've been tired lately, I think it's really because of the Mars-South Node conjunction, with the addition that Mercury is retrograde, dispositing Mars and the South Node. So with Mercury retrograde in Leo, by the way, maybe the answer is to, again, invest more time into what brings you joy and what makes you feel creative and creatively inspired. So bring more fun and heart-centered activity into your day-to-day. Venus will conjoin Jupiter August 12th. And again, around that time, we have two kite formations. August 12th, approximately 11th, 12th, 13th. Super powerful days. And you ideally could experience more bliss, harmony, sort of even just a balance and plentifulness in your home, family, with maybe there's something that comes through for you with a property. I mean, because Mercury retrograde ends on August 11th. So once Mercury retrograde ends, August 11th, and then on the 12th, we have Jupiter-Venus conjunct while Mercury's opposing Pluto. There's going to be a lot of high-volume transactions going through. And I'm picturing like estates and escrow and like properties, being transferred between family members or something. And maybe like the financial records tied to a property come to light. That's something that, wow, that's really interesting. I think maybe that's that. I was like, I need to channel something important this month for this month. And that was it. I feel like there's some sort of property related transaction or acquisition that ends up being revealed in some sort of like congressional or in governmental investigation. Again, I'm not trying to tie this to Epstein. Maybe it's tied to Epstein. Maybe it's tied to somebody else. But I just think that there's some sort of property transfer that was made in the past that implicates somebody very powerful in some sort of larger scheme or something, or it's like somehow it's like funneling money for other reasons, or it's incriminating. but I feel like there's some sort of real estate transaction gone wrong where it was almost like a bribe, or the real estate sort of partnership or financial agreement had some other subtext, right? And like the money that went into that property was eventually funneled for like nefarious activities or something. So look to that in mid-August. Mars will sextile Mercury also in mid-August and really early August, which is nice for bringing about more active communication and learning opportunities. And remember, Mercury opposing Pluto is one of the two kites in early August. And Mercury opposite Pluto, with Mars and Libra creating that grand air trine, it does feel to me like there is a financial revelation, a document that surfaces that is incriminating or compromising, and it's implicating somebody who sits at the center of a lot of things. Leo sits at the center, right? And that agitates people, and it does spark some kind of activist trend. And I'm not saying like there's any singular event that would like melt away polarization. I mean, at this point, nothing can get us out of the entrenched binary system that we're in, I feel like. I mean, not even the pandemic could do that. So, and that's all unfortunate, by the way, because keeping us polarized obviously is getting us away from the middle path, which I talked about philosophically at the beginning. Anyways, let me quickly review July, and then I'll get into the horoscopes. So July, as I predicted, it did indicate a relative de-escalation in the conflict between Iran and Israel and the U.S. Of course, the conflict is ongoing in myriad ways, but I speculated in my July horoscope that once Mars gets out of the square to Uranus and out of the double yod with like Jupiter and Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, that things would calm down. And they, again, relatively did. But now we have, of course, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So obviously that will play out in August. Legacy media, I've already talked about that, being dismantled. And also people are beginning to, this is kind of part of my Virgo new moon prediction I just, gave about regulations of AI, but like people are beginning to develop an emotional connection with AI, in part because AI can give them advice that is so personal and medical or psychological or, it's professional advice basically. So people are turning to AI, increasingly diverting much of their social activity to an AI tool, which is depleting social activity between humans, by the way. So don't forget to reach out to your humans in your life. Before I get into the horoscopes, quickly, we have the Aquarius full moon August 9th at 16 degrees of Aquarius. The chart ruler Saturn is at 1 degree of Aries, conjunct Neptune, opposite Mars and Libra. And again, Mars, Uranus, and Pluto are in a grand air trine. Venus is conjunct Jupiter, and Mercury is still opposite Pluto in a retrograde, Mercury retrograde. And also, with Aquarius here, we're also talking about Uranus being the modern ruler. And so, of course, again, Uranus is involved in both of these kite formations. And Uranus is sextile Saturn and Neptune, with Mercury, by the way, stationing direct 2 days later. So the Aquarius full moon, every full moon is revelatory in some way, right? But the Aquarius full moon is especially, I think, invigorating in the collective. Again, there's some information that comes to light. So yeah, there is some type of information surfacing. I think it has something to do with a financial transaction, but there's some sort of financial transaction, I think, that comes to light around the Aquarius full moon that sort of pinpoints, it puts the spotlight on somebody in particular. But you can use the Aquarius full moon to complete something you started on the Leo new moon, July 24th, or the Aquarius new moon, which was, I think, January 28th or something this year. But, the Aquarius full moon is following up that Leo new moon opposite Pluto, which, again, speaks to secrets being revealed, but also maybe a creative effort that you're working on being brought to fruition and brought to completion. And with Mercury stationing direct 2 days later, we are starting to feel as though we're making more forward progress in our lives again, even though the full moon is a completion of something. Then we have the Virgo new moon, August 22nd, at the 0 degree point, the most, it's the most unfiltered point of that zodiac sign. of any zodiac sign, right? The 0 degree, the 0 is a portal. The chart ruler Mercury there is sextile Mars. So again, we're actively working, speaking, communicating, going about our daily lives. The new moon is squaring Uranus and Gemini. So massive implications for education, AI. I feel like it's the beginning of the school year for a lot of people, and even for colleges that aren't on the quarter system. So I say that because I was at Northwestern, and Northwestern University does quarter system. So we started in late September. I always remember that, late August, I would go to like my friends' colleges and party before going to Northwestern eventually. But, there's going to be maybe demonstrations again on college campuses or at schools. And I just think that in late August, there is maybe even teachers going on strike. That wouldn't even surprise me. But it could also involve essential workers. Like Virgo has a lot to do with essential work and keeping the lights on. And so I wonder if there's certain schools or institutions that can't even operate because there's like, a labor union that's protesting. So let's say janitors went on strike in a certain school district, or, plumbers went on strike, or electricians went on strike. But like something in that vein could happen around the Virgo new moon. And again, squaring Uranus and Gemini, you could even see a labor movement really advocating for guardrails against AI, so that to basically minimize encroachment by AI on their work and their livelihoods. And even in Hollywood, I don't know. I live in LA, so I'm a little biased here, projecting maybe a little bit, but there could be even like some industry within Hollywood that starts to quote unquote rebel due to like a merger, or due to, again, the continual displacement of jobs by AI. Now, I'm of the vein that says like, welcome new media. Like I'm an example of new media, right? Like I believe that we should embrace innovation. It's allowing people like me to scale up entire careers with little more than a camera and a phone and a microphone. So I don't know how much sympathy I have for old industries dying. It's like, how many times have old industries died only to be replaced by another one? It's like the entire reason that this industry is dying is because it's, again, being replaced. But nevertheless, I understand that, people's livelihoods are at stake in the case of like, film editors and sound editors and whatever. Like, I'm not trying to like take that too far, but it's like, technology just ravages industries. That's how it's always been. Anyway, so we also have, the new moon in conjunct Saturn and Neptune, again, with Pluto also creating a yod. So perhaps there will be policy changes that affect entire workforces, entire labor unions. There could be policy changes that affect healthcare benefits. Like healthcare benefits, I think, are changing probably around that new moon. Maybe in the U.S., maybe elsewhere. And maybe there's some like health product that everyone's into that there's some announcement about it or some news breaking about it that's actually not very good for you. I don't know, something like that could happen too. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the horoscopes, and I'm going to focus on the Aquarius full moon and the Virgo new moon and how it's going to impact each rising sign. So let's do that. So we'll start with Aries, as always. So Aries, what's going to happen for you? So looking at first the Aquarius full moon for Aries. So the full moon, remember, is this denouement. It's this apotheosis. It's a climax. It is a pinnacle. And the full moon for Aries in the 11th house is the conclusion, potentially, of something you're doing on social media. Otherwise, could just be an exciting party that you attend. Maybe you end up letting go of a friend. But I think for most of you, you're simply having a great time, honestly, at a party, going out with some friends. Others, with the Mercury retrograde opposing Pluto, might discover that a friend has been gossiping about them, and that's why they cut off the friendship. Now, Aries, you are going to have Mars in your 7th house by that time, opposing Saturn in your 1st. So you're probably not going to get along with that many people at the same time outside of your friend group, maybe. And you are going to be butting heads with a lot of authorities, whether it's a parent or a boss or an institution, or you're going to maybe run into a restriction that you don't like. Mars in the 7th, too, is making you want to exit, get out of a relationship potentially. But I like the fact that Jupiter and Venus are conjunct in your 4th house, creating this plentiful, bountiful energy in your home and family, or maybe helping you finally seal the deal with a property acquisition or like a sales transaction being, finalized. And then I want to jump right away to the Virgo new moon. So for Aries, the Virgo new moon, August 27th, is happening in your 6th house. And the 6th house is a house of work, chores, daily routines, rituals, health, pets. So this new moon is a new beginning in that 6th house. So Aries could start a new job on the 22nd or around the 22nd. You could get another pet. You might also take a different approach to your fitness at that point. So you could start a new fitness regimen at that time. And we do have Venus square Chiron, by the way, on the Virgo new moon. I didn't talk about that. Venus square Chiron does show that there's like wounds coming up in a one-on-one connection. So for you, that might be more so about like a family member triggering some kind of wound. But the Virgo new moon for you in general, I think, is very productive, very efficient, and industrious. And then it's in a yod with Pluto, Saturn, Neptune in the 11th and 1st houses. So, that sort of new beginning is also maybe transforming the way you network. It's transforming your network entirely, or your social media projects. And it's maybe clashing a little bit with some of your long-term goals, but like you have a sense that eventually it will get you to where you want to go. So now we're going to talk about Taurus. So Taurus, we have, and sorry, I have to adjust the software each time here on my iPad, which is a little bit slower than the computer. So Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Rising, but remember to prioritize your rising sign. You have the Aquarius full moon in your 10th house on August 9th. So that would mark a big transition in your career, in your parenting style, maybe seeing your parents in a new light. Perhaps you will develop a new public image entirely. We have Mars, trine Pluto, trine Uranus, opposing Saturn and Neptune. And with Mars in the 6th house, you're really energized at that point to put a lot of effort into your daily work, your fitness, and so all your work houses are getting activated by this trine, right? So that shows that you're either socializing a lot at work, or you are starting to make more, like you're putting in more effort and it is leading to more financial gain or something. And Jupiter and Venus are conjunct in their 3rd. So if you're publishing or writing anything, or if you're teaching something or traveling even, like it's going to start to, like you're going to maybe have a positive experience traveling or driving somewhere in, around mid-August, because Mercury Retrograde is done by August 11th, a couple days later. Jupiter and Venus in the 3rd could also show that you're really getting along with a sibling suddenly. It's like you're really seeing eye to eye with them. But yeah, and I didn't mention this for Aries, but the grand air trine for Aries is in the sort of quote unquote air houses. So for you, Aries, like this month is going to be highly social, right? With Mars trining Pluto and Uranus in the 7th house, 3rd house, 11th house. But for Taurus, a lot of the communication that's going on is in the work houses. So your work life is going to be very active and busy. And opposing Saturn and Neptune in the 12th with Mars there, maybe some of you are actually working on your mental health or your sleep. Like Taurus, if you have any insomnia in August, like really prioritize solving that. But yeah, even like writing projects will go really well this month. I just wanted to re-emphasize that for Taurus, because I know some Tauruses who are like working on newsletters and stuff like that. So now the Virgo new moon. Virgo new moon, remember, it's the first of 2 Virgo new moons this year, but this one's in your 5th. And Virgo, very diligent, right? For Tauruses, this is the beginning of a serious effort. You're starting to apply serious effort towards your creative projects, towards your creative work. And it could also be your the adoption of a new mindset about your children. If you have children, like Virgo is all about like really selfless service. So if you're a Taurus who's a parent, maybe you're just like taking a more selfless approach as a parent. Other Tauruses are maybe trying to make money off of their creativity, because Mars is in the 6th right now. I feel like you're putting in a lot of effort, Taurus. Maybe the effort is stressing you out and it's making you realize that you want to devote more time to your creativity. But also, remember, Mercury is in the 4th house all month. So honestly, on the Aquarius full moon, you could even find out something about your parent, like a secret, or some kind of financial matter could come to light regarding your parents' property or your own property. But the new moon should be a time that is more lighthearted, actually. Like it's helping you just dedicate and allocate more time to something that you love to do. And we do have a yod there with Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune, and a square to Uranus, too. So in a way, that square to Uranus is showing that some of the time investment that goes towards, your creativity is clashing with your job maybe, or you're maybe juggling a bunch of odd jobs and you're trying to figure out how to factor in your creative efforts on top of that. But remember, the 5th house is also romance. So some Tauruses on the Virgo new moon, you end up dating somebody new, you go on a date with someone, and maybe it's promising. Especially because Jupiter and Venus are in the 3rd, and the 3rd house deals with like messaging. So Taurus, you could actually match with somebody who is really suitable for you on a dating app. And I know that sounds like impossible because you swipe thousands of times, and oftentimes it only leads to like one date or something. But really, you could cultivate a romantic connection with somebody on the Virgo new moon. And then Venus square Chiron, some wounds coming up in a relationship for sure. And maybe with a sibling, ironically. Even though like the relations with siblings should really be smooth in mid-August, Venus square Chiron, maybe it even shows that a sibling is coming to you with a mental health challenge. Wouldn't be surprised if some Tauruses have a sibling come to them in late August with just some that asking for a little bit of guidance. All right. So now we have the Gemini, the sign of Gemini to cover. So Gemini, the Aquarius full moon August 9th is in the 9th house, and this full moon is the culmination or completion of a perspective. It's a changing of perspectives. Maybe you are instead deciding that you would like to travel, or you're coming back from that trip. Maybe some of you are completing an educational pursuit. Others are realizing that they'd like to return to higher education, or some Geminis are completing a publishing project in the 9th there, or marketing or advertising campaign. And what I love for you is that Venus and Jupiter are finally conjunct in your 2nd house. So Gemini, out of all the months where you could manifest money this year, this is the month for you. So mid-August, try to manifest as much money as you can if you want to, or simply invest a lot of energy into your natural talents, and maybe that'll pay off as well. Or just indulge a little bit in the nicer, finer things in life. That should be a good time for you. And Mercury is opposing Pluto. So on that full moon, maybe you're, coming back to an old book you were working on, or a topic that you have set aside for a long time. And something in that learning process sparks an obsession almost. Or you are writing about your past in a really powerful way. Mars in Libra in the 5th is activating your 5th house of romance and creativity. Mars in the 5th, I tend to find, leads to a lot of like spicy, steamy dates. So that could happen. Or you will feel just like putting a lot of energy into your creativity, and maybe you'll be competing athletically. I mean, it's trining Uranus in your 1st. So Geminis, you are innovative, like really innovative in August. Very social. You're thinking outside the box, and that outside the box thinking could lead you to the new monetary opportunity. It could also just lead to an expanded sense of self-worth, because you're realizing that like my unique idiosyncratic way of going about life is suddenly kind of cool and being rewarded. And I just like don't care anymore. Like I'm just going to like own it, own my authenticity. And then Mars opposes Saturn and Neptune. Remember that. So with Saturn and Neptune in your 11th, you're really seeing beyond the veil. If you have any friends who are not meant for you anymore, you're realizing that. And, you know, you could clash with a friend with that 11th house opposition to the Mars. You could also maybe get into a bit of a war of words with someone on social media. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Geminis are good at that anyways. So let's go to the Virgo new moon, though, because this is actually, in a lot of ways, more impactful, even though the Jupiter-Venus conjunction is great for your monetization. So the Virgo new moon, this is happening August 22nd in your 4th house. So a new moon in the 4th house, fairly obviously, at least the initial implication is that, you know, Geminis, you could move homes, you could relocate, you could, you know, scale up a new home renovation project, home improvement project. You could, you know, adopt a new energetic dynamic with your family member, especially like a mother. You could also start working from home. That can happen because it's also squaring Uranus and Gemini in your 1st house. So Geminis, maybe you are suddenly being afforded an opportunity to like work from home, or you're working on something a little bit more tech-driven or forward-looking. And it's in a yod with Pluto, Saturn, Neptune. So there's something about your home life and your home environment that is transforming your perspective on a lot of things in life. And, you know, we still have Mars in the 5th at that time, so you are energized by your creativity. So I would say for Geminis, like, acknowledge the desire to move if you have that desire. And, like, you don't have to move on this day, but it does kind of support that idea of moving. However, the square to Uranus is very unpredictable and restless. So make sure that you actually would want to move and that you've thought about it. Like, don't just up and go. And some Geminis might experience a bit of alienation from their parents or someone in their family where you just don't relate to them anymore. Venus scores Chiron. So Venus in the 2nd, scoring Chiron in the 11th. If you're making more money, you're coming into more financial success, you might have a friend or someone in your network who resents that for some reason. And that comes to light a little bit on the new moon. And then Mercury in the 3rd. Geminis, you've been socially active because of that Mercury 3rd house transit. You've been on the go. You've been commuting a lot. But by the way, if you're traveling as a Gemini in early August, really be careful on the road. You're a little bit more accident prone for the first half of the month. Okay. And, you know, Geminis, remember, just be innovative. I just want to summarize that. Be innovative in August because your innovation will pay off. All right. So now we have Cancer. I mean, I wanted to start this video talking about the sign of Cancer because Cancers, you've been pummeled by Pluto for 16 years when it was in your 7th house. You were either in relationships with cheaters or you were cheating on your partner, but there's just like all this messy energy. It was just, your relationships were a mess from like 2008 until last year. And, you know, now Pluto is in the 8th house, which is very kind of scary sometimes. You know, Pluto in the 8th can be very, you know, transformative. It can almost feel like a near-death experience, right? But now you've got Jupiter in Cancer in your sign since June 9th or something, and Cancers have not felt this bountiful energy of Jupiter yet, right? A lot of Cancers have come to me being like, well, you said Jupiter in Cancer would help us. It hasn't. That's because you need another planet to activate the abundance, to direct it. Well, now you've got Venus in Cancer all of August, pretty much. And Venus in your sign enhances what? Your charm, your creativity, your attractiveness. It makes you more social, more relatable. People just want to be around you and in general. And also, money can be flowing more easily, theoretically. Now, none of this is guaranteed, by the way. You have to put in the work also. But, you know, Cancer is August, just like change up your wardrobe, like capitalize on the fact that people are more charmed by you. Maybe you do start a new relationship in August at some point. Maybe you come into a new financial agreement that's really helpful for you after Mercury retrogrades, of course. So anyways, the Aquarius, well, before I say that, to summarize what I was saying there, expect August to be the breakthrough where relationships finally come together or the right relationships enter your life. But the Aquarius full moon, August 9th, is in the 8th house. So a lot of you are experiencing revelations about the true state of your finances and your investments. Maybe you realize that you need to make money off of money and not just store it as a liquid asset in your savings account or whatever ends up happening. But expect a revelation around those topics. Others might have a revelation around something related to their subconscious, their shadow side. Remember, the 8th house is the house of sex, death, transformation, taxes, fears, obsessions. So any of those topics could come up. I'm not saying that you would pass away, but like the full moon in the 8th really brings you face to face with some of your fears. And you also are coming into this position of maybe alchemizing in your relationship, because the 7th house is more about marriage and union and unification with someone, but the 8th house is the alchemical process by which you merge with somebody physically, psychically, sexually, emotionally, and so on. So the full moon will bring up revelations or experiences like this. Mars is in the 4th now, which I don't like as much. Mars in the 4th will kick up some dust and strife in your home life, I guess. But it is trining, it's creating that grand air trine with the double kite with Mercury and Saturn and Neptune. So perhaps during that full moon, you will clash a bit with your family or someone you're living with. But I think there's someone you're living with that you got to sort out a financial situation with. So sort out the financial situation with that person, with that, cohabitant, and things will improve. Mercury retrograde in the 2nd and eventually going direct means that you, in opposing Pluto, you can't hide something financially from somebody. I feel like you got to be honest about the state of your finances with a partner, especially. And in your home, though, even though there's some stress with Mars there, it could even be a place of socializing. You might socialize you might gather some people together in your home, or you might just be, with Mars there, energized by moving furniture around and rearranging things and doing some heavy lifting in your home. But yeah, I do think a lot of you are going to be clashing with a family member, honestly, around this time. But at some point in mid-August, I do think that if you want to manifest a relationship, you could. And then the Virgo new moon on August 22nd is in the 3rd house. So the Virgo new moon is a new writing project, potentially the beginning of a new mode of transportation. Maybe you're getting a new car or a moped or a bike or something, or a bicycle. Others are, I was about to say having a sibling suddenly. Maybe your sibling's born all of a sudden. But I think for most of you, it's just a new dynamic with your sibling. And it's yachting, again, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. So something you're writing maybe has financial implications in the future. Or maybe you could sell that manuscript eventually. Or maybe you're just so busy during the Virgo new moon that in that 3rd house with your everyday chores and tasks that it puts some stress on you as a parent or with your parents. So if you're a Cancer who's either about to become a parent or recently you became a parent or you're already a parent, it just looks like late August, your life is getting kind of hectic and kind of busy. It might interfere with some of your parenting responsibilities. So just really factor that in. So Cancer, just expect to get very busy on that Virgo new moon, but try to manifest a more efficient approach to your day-to-day, and I think it should be fine. And then you have Venus square Chiron, so maybe there's some healing going on with a parent. Maybe you're becoming a parent and you're healing something with a parent in the process. All right, let's go to the next sign of Leo here. So Leo, you've got the Aquarius full moon in the 7th house, August 9th. So naturally, that's going to be a very powerful full moon for you in the 7th house of partnership. So in the 7th house, we're talking about, not just marriage, but business partnership, best friend, alliances, lower courts as well, legal cases. So Leos, you've had Mercury retrograde in your sign. for a lot of July, part of August, you've been reflecting again on where your shadows, like whether you're channeling the shadow side of Leo or the higher expression of Leo, like I talked about in the beginning of the video. So you should know by the full moon, like what you love to do, what gets your heart beating faster, how can you express yourself charismatically without being a prick about it. And now the full moon is coming around to show you whether or not your relationship supports these things. Like you're either breaking up with somebody who doesn't have your best interests in mind, or you're receiving emotional support from a partner or from a close ally. Other Leos may have a legal case resolved around that time. Maybe you're sorting out a contract. You know, Mercury's about to go direct 2 days later. In the 7th house of agreements, you might be sorting something out. Venus and Jupiter are conjunct in your 12th house. So on that side of the equation, like some of you are having these amazing spiritual connections with people, or you are freeing yourself from a relationship in the 12th house that was leading to your karmic undoing that you're finally free of, and now you've balanced your karma. So as a Leo, if you have to like tie up loose ends with a family member as well, or like a past partner, you could do that, I think, really easily on this full moon. And Venus, Jupiter in the 12th could inspire you to devise a new creative idea. I mean, you could, come up with a new song or even spiritual practice. I mean, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the 12th, very blissful, sometimes escapist, sometimes delusional, though. So really make sure you're seeing your partner clearly. But I think you can because Mercury was already retrograde in your sign. Mars is now in the 3rd house in Libra, so you're really energized to communicate, but sometimes you're arguing a lot, overanalyzing things, scatterbrained as well. In the trine, the grand air trine with Uranus and Pluto and the air houses, so to speak, you are very social right now. Very social to a point where you're like, maybe I don't need my partner anymore. But others are just graduating to a new level of intimacy with their partner. Mars opposite Saturn. Some of you maybe want to travel somewhere, but you can't yet. There's like a restriction in that country, or work obligations are getting in the way. But yeah, Leo, that full moon should be very freeing for you in your relationship, and not in the sense that you're all breaking up, but like you just had a new moon in your sign, so you've really asserted the new you, and you've reflected on what actually sparks joy, what actually feels like the honeymoon phase. And so, like, if your partner's not doing that for you, you're getting out of there, or you're making major recalibrations. Sorry, I heard this crazy noise outside. I don't know. Wow. I swear to God, I just heard someone on the street like being crazy. I do live in LA, so that's not surprising. Anyways, for Leos, the Virgo new moon on August 22nd is in the 2nd house. So in the 2nd house with Virgo, you're concentrating maybe on a new job, a new way of making money, manifesting a new salary, really investing in eating the right foods. I think the 2nd house has a lot to do with like, it's a Taurus related house. So we're really talking about like also literally just like survival through sustenance. And so the 2nd house there, maybe you're just like disciplining yourself and like in the way that you take care of your body. But, it really, for a lot of you, will have everything to do with like money, new modes of making money, squaring Uranus in the 11th. Perhaps you are reactivating a social media career, or your social media passions are conflicting with your work responsibilities somehow. And you still get the Uranus-Pluto trine, right? So that's good. There is maybe some networking you're continuing to do with Uranus in your 11th that is positively transforming your relationships in the 7th. And Saturn, Neptune still retrograde in your 9th. You're just breaking down any delusional perspectives you had about the world, or you're kind of like regretting not traveling somewhere long distance. You're like, why did I limit myself? And you want to be mobile again, I could see that. But Virgo, the new moon, I think it's a time for you to work hard. And you're about to get Venus in Leo a couple days later. So Venus in the 12th can be a little quiet for relationships too. But even though I said earlier you could break up with somebody, it's like it's a little bit more isolated. Like maybe you feel more comfortable just kind of like being behind the scenes. But late August, Leo's like, you are really putting relationships front and center in general, and you're going to be even more creative, charismatic, and so on, which is great. So now let's go to Virgo. Virgo, you have the Aquarius full moon in the 6th house. And for Virgos, the 6th house in Aquarius there has a lot to do with health, work routines, chores, fitness. So Virgo, the Aquarius full moon is going to reveal to you maybe something about your health, or you finally figure out how to live a life that, is optimizing your health. And others are experiencing a change with their pet. And we get Mars and Libra at that point in the 2nd house. So Mars in the 2nd usually gets a little bit competitive about making money, and it gets it sometimes will be impulsive with expenditures. It'll start spending money hastily. So with that Aquarius full moon in the 6th, it could be that you reach a milestone with your work project, and then you're now I'm going to go spend money for some reason because of that. Other Virgos are going to experience an emotional stress or a stressful emotional event at work for some reason. Virgo, it could be that your coworker gets promoted instead of you, and then Mars is in your 2nd. You're damn, I want to make money. I want to make more money, and then you go off and you demand a higher salary somewhere else, or you attract a salary somewhere else. And keep in mind, the Sun and Mercury are also in your 12th house, and Mercury's retrograde in your 12th. So it's still kind of a quiet period for Virgos, focused a little bit more on spiritual practices, mental health, sleep. And what I like, though, about this time period is that Venus and Jupiter are in the 11th house. So if you're trying to manifest virality on social media, finding more well-connected friends, or expanding your network, making a lot of money on social media, you could do that. Or generating your income through engagement with the crowd, like going to a conference or performing as a musician in front of a crowd. Virgo, you do kind of have that teed up for you. So early August is very bountiful in its opportunities for you in the domain of groups, communities, and social media. But the Aquarius full moon in of itself, right, is really highlighting your health and maybe some changes you have to make with your health or your work process. Or it is the completion, again, of a fitness routine or work project. Mars does oppose Saturn and Neptune in the 8th. So some of you are kind of grating your teeth about some financial matter. You thought you had some investment thing under control, and then your investing advisor is no, you actually have to do this and this. So some Virgos are working through some slightly frustrating financial situations, but this grand air trine is really activating your work houses and your financial house in the 8th house. So I think a lot of Virgos are really energized and actually charged up to be working in a new environment, in a new context, maybe deploying AI to streamline what they're doing. But along the way, there is something regulatory that you may have to navigate with your own investments and finances, basically. So now let's go to the Virgo new moon. So the next new moon here, the next lunar cycle is significant. It's in your sign. So this is kicking off a brand new energy for Virgo, new presentation of self. You can make a new first impression on somebody that really is important for your career, or your relationships, or something else. You could adopt a new, I don't want to say persona, but it's just a refreshing new moon for you. So it's not an eclipse. It will build up to a lunar eclipse in your 7th house, September 7th, though. So perhaps there's an independent streak that you come into on the new moon, and then by the full moon, you break up with somebody just like Leo did in the previous full moon. So yeah, I mean, Virgos, you're feeling yourself. You're feeling independent by the end of August, and don't worry about what that leads to in your relationships. Just be authentic, be yourself. You still get Venus in the 11th by that time, so you're still socially active, and working hard with Mars in the 2nd. Mercury is direct, but in the 12th house. So you've had Mercury in the 12th house since late June. So all of July, all of August, you are, really putting a lot of mental energy towards meditation, spiritual practices, like I said. Keeping a dream journal. I mean, Virgos, you're having wild dreams, and maybe you're interpreting and articulating these dreams. And the new moon is in a yod, remember, with Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. So there's some sort of new presentation of self that is influencing or even clashing slightly subtly with your investments and your work. I just feel like there's something that you want to do that gets you away from the bullshit of some of your day-to-day tasks. That's how I would interpret it. So now we go into Libra. Libra, we have the Aquarius full moon in the 5th house. So for Libras, the Aquarius full moon in the 5th house is the culmination of something creative you're doing. Maybe it is the climax in a romantic relationship. You cut it off or you merge with them emotionally even more than before. We have Mars in your 1st house now, so you are feeling independent as well. And opposing Saturn and Neptune in the 7th, you might be at odds with your partner significantly. Like out of all the signs who are most likely to break up this month, it would be Libras and Leos. Because Leos have the full moon in their 7th, and Libras have Mars in their 1st, opposing Saturn in their 7th. So Libra, it's like maybe you're clashing with your partner. You feel like your partner's restricting you. You vocalize that. And like, you know, Uranus is in your 9th, so maybe you decide to travel somewhere eccentric or different. I love that I love that Venus and Jupiter are in your 10th. That is definitely leading you to some of the best career opportunities, maybe of your life. And with the full moon in the 5th, maybe you're realizing a creative opportunity in your career. So Libra, if you're trying to transition, let's say from one career, to another, and that new career is more creative, I think you could even manifest it on the Aquarius full moon. Mercury's still retrograde in the 11th. You're circling back to old friendships, reflecting on those friendships, reflecting on your social media strategy. And I want to jump, though, to the Virgo new moon. And by the way, you can solve these relationship challenges. It just means that you have to, explain to your partner the ways in which they're limiting or restricting you and overcome that. So now the Virgo new moon, August 22nd, is in the 12th house. So 12th house is a house of letting go, surrender, dreams, places of isolation, mental health. So Libra, as you're committing to maybe a different routine, Virgo's routine, that helps you improve your mental health, or you are dedicating time to a daily spiritual practice. Venus is still in the 10th, so you are afforded greater opportunities still in your career. Mercury's direct now, so you're communicating with your friends in a more articulate way. And the new moon is yachting Saturn and Neptune and Pluto, so that is showing that some sort of new headspace that you're going into is somehow taking you away from one of your relationships and maybe siphoning you away from the obligations you have towards your partner, but it is transforming you creatively. And it is squaring Uranus and Gemini, so, for Libras, it could even be that you decide to, break away from the pack if you're on a long-distance trip abroad. Like, maybe you decide to, cut the trip short and go home and just retreat. Or you go take a retreat to get away and to isolate and to recuperate. And by the way, for Virgos, I didn't really talk about this, but for Virgos, that Virgo new moon in your 1st house is showing that there is a new you that you're manifesting in a way, but it is clashing with something you're trying to change about your career. It's almost like your career as a Virgo is so unpredictable right now and a little bit chaotic that it's sort of distorting that new journey you're trying to go on. So I wanted to mention that for Virgo. And sorry that I'm really starting to rush through the signs, but I do have a hard stop in a few minutes, actually. Life happens. So let's go to, the next sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio, the Aquarius full moon is in your 4th house. So Scorpio, August 9th, you could have a very emotional moment or connection with a parent, or you might move, you might step in, you just might get more insight even on your role as a parent or a caregiver. You could maybe be finishing a home project, although Mercury's retrograde, so I hope you're not doing anything major with your home. Also, the Aquarius full moon is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, right? And Saturn's in the 6th. So some of you might find out something health related about a parent Or a parent may just convey something to you about like, hey, you need to get your health in order. With Uranus also ruling it in the 8th house, some of you are experiencing some ups and downs, maybe financially. You're trying to navigate unpredictability with your finances, or you're exploring intimacy in a different way. Now, you have Jupiter and Venus conjunct in your 9th house. So maybe there's a place you're traveling to that is very positive for you, or you're learning something that helps you balance out your life. Or maybe some of you are starting to invest into a publishing project that ends up boding well for your financial situations. Others are investing in higher education or a school or a schooling program or a trip. Like I think a lot of Scorpios actually might invest in a trip around that time. Although Mercury is still retrograde in your 10th house. So you're reflecting on your career. How can I make my career more fun? How can I enjoy what I'm doing? Mars is in the 12th. So your sleep cycle is starting to get disrupted. You're having wild dreams. And you really are focusing on physical and mental health at that point. So really focus on your health, Scorpio. Make sure that you have a balanced home and family life. If your home is stressful, if your home environment is stressful, really try to shore that up so that you can make sure your health is all in check. And with Saturn in the 6th, you are really like putting the nose to the grindstone, working extremely hard day in and day out, and maybe feeling slightly depleted by that. And that's why you decide around this full moon, I'm going to invest in a trip to nurture myself, right? 4th house can have a nurturing quality. Or maybe I invest in a trip to see my family, or my family invests in a trip to see me. And then by the time we get to the Virgo new moon, August 22nd, it's happening in the 11th house. So the Virgo new moon, late August, great time for Scorpios to manifest a new friendship, to make a new connection, to go to a networking event, to launch a new type of social media account or a project. And it's ruled by Mercury in the 10th, which is direct, and Mercury direct in the 10th is showing that there is some forward momentum in your career again, and you're communicating, you're articulating yourself well in your career, in the public eye. And apologies, by the way, I didn't really go through the rulership scheme for each of the signs here, but I still captured the essence of each one. But ideally, what I do usually is I look at the ruling planet of the newer full moon first. But the ruling planet Mercury is in the 10th, so you're feeling a little bit more like you're hitting your stride professionally. But the new moon is squaring Uranus, so maybe there's just like more social activities coming up for you that are you're maybe just like mingling with people that are helping you arrive at these really epic epiphanies, actually. And it is in a yod with Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. So in that sense, there's maybe a friend who's helping you navigate some intensity at your home or within your family, or as part of your daily routine, you're just like socializing with people more. I think if you're a Scorpio, which I am, I would vow on this new moon to just incorporate more sociability into your day-to-day, actually. Because like with Saturn in the 6th, like you're working hard enough already. Like really put some energy into your friendships. Like do something nice for your friends too as a Scorpio. All right, so now we have Sag. So Sagittarius, the Aquarius full moon is in your 3rd house of communication, transportation, siblings, neighbors, and messaging, and writing and teaching. So Sag, full moons in the 3rd can show that you are having a very emotional discussion with somebody, maybe with a sibling, maybe with a neighbor, or you're just exchanging messages that are a little bit heated, but still informative. But you also have Venus and Jupiter conjunct, by the way, in your 8th house. That is a really prime time for you to start generating more passive income. So some Sages are making more money off of money, so to speak, or off their stocks, their investments, their assets, or technically some of you are getting an inheritance and you're finding out about it through the 3rd house full moon, but that's pretty niche. Others are starting to talk about buying and selling property, finishing the conversation about that with the 3rd house full moon, although Mercury's still retrograde, so wait a few days. If you're a Sag who's trying to buy or sell property by August 12th, it does look pretty good. Other Sages are reflecting on trips they want to take or coming back from the trip. Mars is in the 11th now, so energized by community, energized by friendships, but also stressed by friendships, stressed by communities, or fighting with people on social media. But it's trining Uranus in the 7th. Uranus in the 7th is kind of upending relationships already for you, probably. But there's just like a lot of social activity happening. And maybe you break up with somebody and then you go socialize. Or you break up with somebody and then you invest in a different property. Maybe you have just the conversation that the relationship has to end, with the full moon in the 3rd being ruled by in a modern sense, or Uranus in the 7th. But then Saturn rules this also in the 5th. So some Sagittarius are going to have a conversation with their partner about whether or not they want to have kids and when. And if you're not on the same page with your partner as a Sag about when to have kids, you got to have that conversation now. So now we go to the Virgo new moon, and this is in the 10th. So the genesis of a new career is possible. It could be that you are becoming a parent even then. Or you're just adopting new responsibilities, or you are relating differently to your parent. And it's ruled by Mercury in the 9th, which is now direct. So perhaps you're traveling for work. Others are adopting, again, a new perspective on parenting or on their career in general. Venus continues to be in the 8th. So you're really focused on the alchemy of relationships and your finances. It's squaring Uranus in the 7th. So maybe you're starting a new career that creates this tumultuous environment in your relationship for some reason, or you go into business with someone who's kind of iconoclastic, kind of tech-driven, and they help you kind of vault into this higher career opportunity. And it's in a yod, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. So there's something you're beginning in your career or responsibility you're taking on that clashes with some of the transformation you're experiencing, or in your, in terms of your intellectual interests. And it's clashing a little bit with maybe some creative ambitions, honestly. I just feel like for Sagittarius, you are exploring your long-term goals with like having children or having a family actually right now. But you're also very social right now, so if you just want to socialize, do that. If you're focused on investments, focus on property, it's also perfectly fine. So now we have Capricorn, the Aquarius full moon's in your 2nd house. So August 9th, this could mark the realization of, your self-worth, self-esteem, that it needs to be improved, or that you really are in a good place with it. Could be the conclusion of a job, the changing of a salary, something changes with your possessions. You maybe sell one of your personal possessions, like a couch or a chair. I mean, I did that during the Sag full moon as a Scorpio. I mean, sometimes it's that simple. Others are potentially, I think a lot of Capricorns actually are changing up their work process with Uranus ruling this full moon in the 6th. But I want to highlight for Caps that Venus and Jupiter are aligning around this time in your 7th house. So the Venus-Jupiter alignment is also, like for Cancers, it's also for you a long time coming. So you've also been decimated by Pluto in your sign, right? Or for Cancers, it was in the 7th house. But Cancers and Capricorns both had Pluto on their axis, right? So remember, it's not just 12 zodiac signs, it's 6 pairs of opposites. So Jupiter and Venus is coming in here. So, Jupiter's already been in your 7th since June 9th. But now Venus is joining Jupiter in your 7th house to really help you attract the best possible partner in your life. Now, if you downloaded my 2025 horoscopes, you already knew that this would be the time for it. But Jupiter and Venus is, for Capricorns, going to help them attract someone who is emotionally open and vulnerable and supportive. And maybe this full moon in your 2nd house is showing you that, hey, there is somebody out there who sees me, who kind of reflects my high sense of self-worth, and they actually kind of boost my sense of self-worth. Not in a needy way, but they kind of validate you. Others are actually just attending a meeting with somebody. They're going out to lunch with somebody, and they're like, hey, I secretly have a job opportunity for you. So if you're a Capricorn and you're looking for a new job and you're trying to just network, you could go to a business lunch with somebody, and it translates to a whole new job. Saturn is also ruling this in the 4th house. Some of you may have to spend money on something home-related, or a family member maybe is a little bit ill and you have to spend money on some of their caregiving. Honestly, that could be the case for some of you. Mars is in the 10th, so you're ready to make a badass move in your career, reach new heights, take a risk with Mars opposing Saturn. Maybe you don't get along with one of your parents this month, but at the same time, you are truly like ramming through to that next level professionally, which I love. So now we have, and Mercury's retrograde in the 8th, so you are still reflecting on your finances and investments. Now, the Virgo new moon is in the 9th, so 9th house Virgo new moon could be the manifestation of a new trip abroad or overseas or across the country. Could be the beginning of an educational pursuit, publishing project, advertising project, marketing project, new perspective you're adopting, and Mercury rules the new moon from the 8th house here, now direct. Mercury direct in the 8th means that you have a better hold over your investments and you really understand what the state of your investments are. You still have Venus in the 7th, so relationships should be going well, although Mars is in your 10th still, so feeling stressed by work, but energized by new work opportunities potentially. And it does square Uranus. So maybe a trip you're taking abroad or across the country is shaking you out of your routine, or maybe screwing with your health a little bit. But like, I think that a trip is not a bad way to use that new moon. And it's yachting, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. So the new moon here means that the trip is maybe transforming your self-esteem somehow, although clashing with some of your desires to focus on resource allocation or resource acquisition or something. And maybe, again, I hate to say this, but maybe some of you are traveling to take care of a family member. But remember, like, if you remember nothing else about today in this video, like, remember that your relationships can improve, but only if you allow it, right? Like, if you're a Capricorn who's like, oh, doom and gloom, nothing will ever work, then you're not going to find them. Okay, we have Aquarius. Full moon is in your sign, so you're feeling hyper emotional, emotionally charged. This is a perfect full moon for you to release anything that doesn't serve you anymore. You are, just opening up emotionally. Mercury's retrograde in your 7th house, opposing Pluto in your 1st. So maybe a partner comes clean to you, reveals something to you, and you break up with them. Maybe you reveal a secret to your partner. Maybe you have a better understanding all of a sudden about the underpinning or the psychological dynamics underpinning your relationships. Venus and Jupiter are conjunct in the 6th. So work should be going better. You should be getting along with coworkers a little bit more. And you have a better grasp of your health. Your health is improving. And there's just something about your day-to-day ritual now that feels more balanced and harmonious. But I think you benefit the least from the Jupiter-Venus conjunction, just to be honest. Unless you're going through a health crisis and like it just like opens you up to a new health revelation. Or your health just like, again, balances out. We also have Mars in the 9th, opposite Saturn in the 3rd. So some of you want to travel long distance, but maybe someone is trying to tell you no for some reason. And Leos are going through that as well, potentially. But Aquarius, I feel like there is a part of you that does want to travel and just get away for a bit. So I think a lot of you actually are traveling on this full moon. And others are wanting to assert their philosophy to somebody or their perspective to somebody, and they realize maybe that their perspective diverges with their partners, and that's why they decide to break up. But yeah, ultimately Aquarius, just think about this part of the month as a purging of sorts that ultimately, like, if anything, helps improve your health. I feel like there's just some toxic energy you got to get rid of that will help you achieve balance. And then the Virgo new moon is in, sorry, I have to dial back the hours here, change the ascendant. It's in your 8th house, finance, investing, and shared resources. So a Virgo new moon in the 8th is really helping you get a grip on your finances, your investments as well. Maybe you adopt a new financial plan. Maybe you merge resources with your partner. Maybe you develop a new physical intimacy with your partner. Maybe you start to really take a closer look at your underlying subconscious dynamics and your fears. It's ruled by Mercury, which is now direct in the 7th. So you're in a better stream of communication with your partner or the close allies in your life. And the new moon is squaring Uranus in the 5th. So there is some sort of like, I don't know. I feel like there's some kind of, this is going to sound a little sort of disconnected, but there's some sort of wild experience you're going to have in a creative context that actually helps you tap into your underlying fears that were previously unknown. And I feel like some of your fears had control over you. Some of your obsessions had control over you. But there's something kind of like outside the box that you're going to be doing in a creative context that really helps you just like be a little bit more free and not so caged in by your fears. Other Virgos might just, again, have a great hookup, a great one-night stand. I mean, it could even be that. So now we finally go to Pisces. And Pisces, we're going to go to the Aquarius full moon. This one, Aquarius full moon is going to be quiet for you. I don't want you to be doing too much as a Pisces here. Do not try to do everything on this full moon. Pisces, you got to relax, got to meditate, take a bath, like purge, let go. You are releasing on the full moon in the 12th, just letting go, surrendering to, let's say, a higher power, to faith that things will work out, to faith that your guides are looking out for you, honestly. And it's partly ruled by Saturn in the 2nd. So you are focusing on long-term financial goals somehow simultaneously, and Uranus also rules it from the 4th. So maybe unexpected events are happening in your home and family life. And on this full moon, you take a temporary breather from that. You just take space. Yeah, just to to really stabilize your mental health. Mars is in the 8th, so some of you are having epic sex. Others are fighting about money and finances, clashing with regulators, or clashing with a financial advisor. With Saturn in the 2nd, someone might be telling you, hey, you got to restructure your assets if you want to reach this long-term goal. But I love that Jupiter and Venus are in the 5th, right? This is one of the best conjunctions of the year for you, if not the best. Jupiter and Venus in the 5th can help you manifest a new romantic partner, new romantic fling. You could go on the best date of your life. You could write one of the best songs of your life. You could put on one of the best performances of your life. Not necessarily on the full moon, but maybe. Or just around mid-August. But it's kind of like a Jim Morrison full moon for Pisces here. It's like you're performing on a stage or in front of a crowd, but you're kind of channeling a little bit, and you're taking a 5-minute tangent on the bridge in the song or something, and you're kind of like writhing around. There's something really trippy about this full moon, which I actually like. Mercury's retrograde in the 6th, so you are continuing to reflect on your health and daily routines. And now I want to go to the Virgo new moon in your 7th house. So this could be the birth of a new relationship as well. August 22nd. It could also show that, it doesn't always have to be a new relationship, right? It could just be with Virgo that you're committing to continuous improvement in your existing relationship. You're promising that to your partner, I'm gonna show up for you in a bigger way. It's ruled by Mercury, which is now direct in the 6th. So the 7th house could even be a mentor, consultant, advisor, a health advisor telling you this is the diagnosis, or this is how you should approach your nutrition, your daily regimen to improve your health. And you're like, great. We also have Venus still in the 5th, so creativity is still peaking and looking really good. Your romantic life should be going well. The new moon is squaring Uranus in the 4th. So maybe something in your relationship, it's almost like there's a promise that you're making to somebody, a pledge that you're making to somebody that somehow either renders your home life more chaotic, or you are pledging to be more consistent with your partner so that you minimize the chaos in your home. It's like you're responding to the chaos in your home and being like, all right, I will agree to change the diapers this many times, these days, or whatever, or I will agree to, actually be more present with you. The Virgo new moon for Pisces is really showing them that they kind of have to show up a little bit more consistently in their relationship. Or you'll manifest a partner who shows up for you more consistently. And remember, there's a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces September 7th, 2 weeks later, and that will be a massive purge for you if the relationship isn't working. So, wow, I went way over time. I tried to keep this under 2 hours. Very tough to do. But keep in mind, I do have 2026 horoscopes coming sooner than you expect. And those videos, I've already filmed 3 out of the 12 signs. Those videos are going to be like, I don't want to reveal too much, actually, because other astrologers might be watching. But those 2026 horoscopes are going to take all of this to another level. So, but I hope that you derived, value out of this. I think it would be smarter to just have downloaded my 2025 horoscopes back in like last October, because you would already know all of the things I just told you. But I forgive you if you didn't download those videos. But now you know that you could have found all this out a long time ago and planned ahead with your calendar and everything. So let this be a lesson to download my 2026 horoscopes in a few months. My goal with my annual horoscopes is that they are so thorough that you don't have to watch my content for the entire year. You don't have to watch my content at all for the entire year. Obviously, I'll give you nuances every day, but the essence of the year is captured in those horoscopes. And there's still time to download the 2025 ones because we still have many months left in 2025. And they're only $20 each. Also, I have a Substack. Subscribe to my Substack. I do weekly live birth chart readings on my Substack. I also have a monthly show in Los Angeles where I do live readings on stage. So check, keep abreast of those dates. And also, but I got to emphasize this again. I do 5 readings a week in those Substack sessions, and they're like extensive. They're like 20-minute readings. So if you want a reading, you can do that. And I do offer limited 4-hour coaching sessions that are in person in LA, and it's by inquiry only. So if you are interested in that, email me. My email's on my website. It's also innerworldsastrology@gmail.com. But I've started to do those recently. They've been great. It includes like a booklet with your chart and a booklet summarizing the insights from the reading after. We do an hour on your birth chart, hour on your transits, and 1 hour on manifestation and the manifestation strategy that you'll adopt going forward. And the hour before, we get lunch and we just talk through your life and your life story so that we can kind of like cut through the cold reading aspect. Because in the past, the many thousands of readings I've done in the past few years, I've been doing cold readings because I think that's the right way to do it. But I've done that. I've already proven that astrology works and all that stuff. So like now we're just gonna like get to the heart of like, what's your story? Why are you here? And how can I help? And how can I actually help you with the manifestation plan? So anyways, let me know what you thought about this video in the comments. Let me know what you think about this production setup. Is it not adding any value for you? I'm actually curious. I'm not being facetious, even though I always sound sarcastic. Like, does it add value? Does it not add value? Do you appreciate the graphics in this as well? Do you want me to go back to the old school Zoom format? Anyways, thank you so much. I'm Evan Nathaniel Grimm. Hope you have a great August. Take care.